We'll call it to order. Town of Diamond Valley recognizes and acknowledges the traditional territories of the Treaty 7, including the Blackfoot Confederacy member Siksika, Kainai First Nations, the Stoney Nakoda, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley First Nations, the Denia Tsuut'ina First Nations, and Métis Region 3, and all those that make Treaty 7 land their home. We have before us the September 18th, 2024 agenda. It is scheduled to start at 5 and it is 5:07. So I was a little tardy. We have a consent agenda. Does council wish to remove anything from the consent agenda and place it on the regular agenda for discussion?
So I can give us a motion to the consent agenda.
We shall take that from Councillor Gordon. Anything from the consent agenda, Councillor Kelly?
No, sir.
Okay.
All good.
All right, consent agenda adoption by Councillor Gordon, all in favor? That is carried, thank you. I will take an adoption for the regular. We do have one thing I need to ask, because after talking at the IMC, we discussed Councillor Barb Castell as a member at large for the library board. For the MD, and she said she would love to because she's asked and has been denied. Very strange. But they're going to put it on their organizational meeting and appoint her. So I thought, why don't we appoint her tonight if we just make an addition?
Then I will go through the library.
Yes,
The library has to recommend.
exactly.
Okay.
The county is making an appointment so that she is authorized to be their representative, but it has to come through the library
Done.
board.
So it'll be October.
And
so
then
the
you're-
meeting and all that. Okay, perfect. In that case, Hazel gives us a motion to adopt the agenda. No additions. Okay, all in favor? Excellent, thank you. And we will get a motion to go in closed. Heather gives us that. Section 17 and 2401. All in favor? And that is at 5:09. Thank you. We are good. I shall bang the gavel. We are here. It is 6:34, 4 minutes late for the start of the regular business. However, we started today at 5:03, I believe it was. We had our land acknowledgement. We then adopted the consent agenda. For anyone who wants to know, the consent agenda streamlines some of our meetings, but there's really good information in there. So if you're looking online and you're checking the agenda, be sure and click on all the links in the consent agenda, because it has a lot of good information in it. And if there's anything in the consent agenda that council wants to debate, ask questions of clarity, or just bring a little bit more notice to, we remove it from the agenda and we put it onto the regular agenda, and that's done through a motion. We did not remove anything this evening. We simply adopted it and moved on to our next one, in which case we also adopted the agenda unamended. And we had a closed session under section 24 and 27. And we came out of that at 6:23. Small recess, and here we are at 6:36 now, because I talked for 2 minutes. So we are going to move on in the regular scheduled agenda. Question period. We had no motions arising from closed, by the way. Actually,
No, we did.
no, we did not. Okay, so good. So there you go. 4 motions arising from closed. We have nil. 5, question period. Question period is a 15-minute section or 10-minute section of time during the regular council meeting for members of the public to ask questions of council or administration. You can phone, text, call into the office, talk to a counselor, however you want to get us the question. We ask that you fill out the form and submit it, and then we can get the backgrounds and proper answers. Mr. Davey, have we received any questions for question period this evening?
We have not, your worship.
All right, having none, we will move on in the sense of time. Statutory hearings, and we have none. Delegations, we do have one Mr. Larry Kapuska, member of the Diamond Valley Sustainable Living Center. And Mr. Kapuska, you can sit right in the middle there and you can hit that little button.
It's gonna go. I think that might be.
It might, yeah, you could probably not. And I would just remind you that we have 15 minutes for delegations. So at 10 minutes, if you're still talking, then I'll give you a little head nod, just so we can streamline the conversation and get to maybe some Q&A and move on as efficiently as possible. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. This is something that I've been working on for quite some time. Since I moved to the area in the spring of 2014, it seems like we've been in a continual deficit for water coming into the area, and our use is usually a little bit more than that. As an ecologist and a risk assessor, I feel it's an important area to tackle. I know the council deals with this quite frequently. This may not seem like the ideal time right now, in that we got these fortuitous rains and just the right time for the crops, just the right time to alleviate all of the challenges that were looming. But many of you probably know that that picture there was taken last December. The Old Man Reservoir, it was essentially dry. It's rebounded a little bit, but we're lucky. We're in, all the climatologists tell us, we're in for a long-term drought cycle, maybe for another decade or two, until hopefully some of the currents in the oceans and the jet streams change and alter the precipitation patterns. And so a group of us have been talking about this for some time, and we thought there would be an opportunity to provide some technical information, actual data about the water cycles, how they function in this area. And what this leads to then is an understanding of some of the things we might be able to do. So if we go to this next slide, this is a distribution of water allocation in Alberta. It's dated 2011, but it's fundamentally the same. Most of our surface water is going to agriculture, equivalent, nearly the same amount going to industry. And then municipalities, if you were to put Diamond Valley, you're probably just one of the borderline areas there. So it may not seem like a big deal in the large scale of things, but for the residents here, I'm sure you've heard a lot of griping over the years about why do I have to do this and that and the other thing. Anyway, most of the water that we rely on is surface water, and there's relatively small amounts come from groundwater once we get out of the acreages that are scattered around this area. But we see that reflected in our rivers, and some of the partners I'm working with are part of the Trout Trust, which are interested, along with Trout Unlimited, to try to support the fisheries in the area. And we've seen fisheries closures nearly every year because of low flow and elevated temperatures that make it impossible for the fish to survive. Next one, please. So the Trout Trust members, many of you probably know these folks. Some of them are local, some of them a little farther away. And we've been talking with some experts like Bob Sanford and Don McGarvey as well about some of the water issues. Next, please. We basically have three goals for the initiatives that we're undertaking. One is just to raise awareness among the general public and among all stakeholders. We really want to emphasize a fact-based approach. It's good to have all the facts on the table and then start arguing where we want to do things. And until we have a fact-based foundation, it's hard to make any reasoned judgment. And then from this, we would hope that by engaging the stakeholders, we could work towards some short-term, mid-term, and long-term solutions. Long-term would be in the range of maybe a decade, where we start to institute some of the land use practices that would protect the headwaters and make it a more natural flow of water from the headwaters into our streams. Next, please. So the general factors we're right in the midst of climate change. Everybody's aware of that. We continue to have population growth. And then the real difficult one is land use practices. Everybody has their own idea of what ought to be done. And that's where you guys have the fun of trying to sort through, which group are you going to listen to? Which one is going to be favored? And we have various stakeholders. First Nations have an important role to play, ranchers and farmers, as evidenced by the water use of the agriculture sector. And then, of course, residents and visitors. And the visitors are coming here in large part for recreation and use of the waterways and the mountain scenery. Next, please. So what are the outcomes? We would hope to have fact sheets that would be vetted and would be agreed by all the parties involved. Among the things we want to do is develop very clear descriptions of how the different stakeholders interact with this limited resource. And ultimately, we would hope to have some summary reports and offer up some of these technical and political solutions for short, mid-term, and long-term addressing of these issues. Next, please. Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah, so what I'm asking for here is see whether or not council would be interested in working with the Diamond Valley Sustainable Living Center to host a number of town hall style meetings where we'd have opportunities to bring people in to discuss some of these issues. And what I've worked with some other folks here, we thought we might start with the film Dried Up and What Now, which is a depiction of the Old Man Reservoir and all of the stresses that are placed on that. The second there would be some follow-up discussions with that. The second town hall would be, I tried to get cute and call it skin in the game. We want individuals to understand their role, what could they play in helping alleviate problems. And on the policy side, some of this may move towards gray water and xeriscaping as a way to work through all these things. I think the lessons we're learning from Calgary with the main feeder being broken, even in times of abundance, there can be tragedies that visit everybody. And then finally, this effort to have an understanding of the water cycle so that everybody has a common base of discussion. So with that, I take any questions you have.
So far, 10 years. Best timed presentation so far for a delegation. Nailing it. Excellent. We got lots of time for Q&A. So council, questions, concerns, questions. Heather.
Thanks, Larry, for coming. Of course, this has been on this council's radar and previous council's radar for quite some time. I think Diamond Valley or in fact, Turner Valley did some very future thinking with having the reservoirs that we do have. Many communities are in dire shape because they don't have the reservoirs, nor are they at the headwaters. So I think that this community's done some great forward thinking, and hopefully that will help us. And yes, we've been on, I call it water conservation restrictions, and we've been talking about that as well. I mean, we all have to start getting a water conservation part and educating people about the difference between water conservation and a restriction. Calgary's in right now is a restriction because they're in an emergency situation. Have you been in discussion with, there are other groups that maybe should be coming into this fold, that Bow River Basin, under them, the Sheep River Basin folks. Have you had any discussions with them regarding some of this work that you've been doing?
Only tangentially, some of the parties that are involved in the Crown Trust that are connected with some of those. I wanted to serve locally, tested here. And then perhaps we could take the show on the road to some of the other communities down the road.
Right.
I used to live in Calgary, so I'm aware of some of the
Yeah,
Bow River issues.
it's a pretty daunting task. Educating people, and I get how you want to do that. And it's a daunting task dealing with all the environment on many bases. Yes, it did. I mean, even just when you mention the word gray water and Alberta Environment's outlook on gray water, like, it's so, I'm gonna say it's stupid the way they look at it. Gray water should be used for what it could be used for, and they don't allow it.
Well, if I may, one of the things that I think would be so obvious, but I don't know why it isn't. Think of all of the jobs that could be created if the policy was to retrofit all of the buildings to be able to capture gray water.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge, huge market that could be developed.
But you can't, so the
I know.
other environment don't let you, so
I know.
there's some hurdles that need to be jumped to get by some of this stuff.
I understand.
And I think it's wonderful that you're moving forward with this and trying to educate people and stuff, but I don't think that my personal opinion, and I am a water person, I've been heavily involved through the years with the water issues and stuff, so I don't think that it's the town, like, town halls cost money. Which I think that you're kind of asking for in a roundabout way, like, help host a town hall.
Well, in a sense, what I'm asking for is just to say that you're on board with the idea. I'm not asking for funding.
Okay.
I'm asking for co-sponsoring, if you will, which would mean it could be posted easily on your different social outlets.
Perhaps,
Yeah,
you know, like, because we have like pretty detailed information about the water usage and things like that.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
okay.
No, I'm
That
not,
makes me feel a bit
I'm
better.
not coming here hand in hand. I put my head down here.
Yeah, that makes me feel a lot better. I fully support, educating people fully, especially water, like, it's been a big concern.
Yeah.
I'm a former rancher, rancher's right. And, like, most ranchers are pretty conservative with their water, and care for the lands and stuff, so, and now living in town and stuff, I watch it. So I support this kind of education. I just really do want it to be fact driven. Because over the years, even though we've tried, it's not fact driven, and that really concerns me. So like promoting conservation and versus restrictions, et cetera, I think it's really important. And our administration worked pretty hard on preparing for the drought situation and have a plan put in place. So I think that maybe working together with that is, go.
Brent, and then John.
Thanks, Larry. So I'm gonna take a bit, I'm in more great support of this. To what extent at this point, I'd like to at least support the idea of a one town hall meeting, which I'd be more than happy to go to, because I'd like to see how the residents feel about this type of thing. One thing that I do want to mention is our lack of volunteers that we currently have and that we struggle to find for a lot of our committees. And yet here you are as a volunteer who is working with some educated people, trying to find solutions. And that's what I really like to see. And so I would certainly be in support of attending a town hall meeting alongside you guys. I'm not going to speak for the rest of council and say we're all on board, but I would certainly be there to see, because I think it's important. We just had a conversation about getting different types of information out to the residents and how much of a struggle that can be at times. And as much as we can co-sponsor something like this, residents may feel more willing to come and have a conversation with experts, because you're an expert. I'm not an expert on water conservation. I've got a couple rain barrels and I water my garden with gray water. So that's where I'm coming at it from. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you building a team that seems like you've invested a lot of time and energy in. And I'd be more than happy to support town hall thing at the Flair and Derrick. And I would go as far as to, ask council or administration, about donating an hour or two of the Flair and Derrick to help support that. If that's not outside of our scope, or if there's not too much admin time that would have to be done to do that, but I think that we need to look at this in a proactive way, which you guys have done. You said you've been working on this since 2014.
I moved here in 2014.
Okay,
As an ecologist and a risk assessor, I've been involved in sustainability issues for a long time.
yeah, so I appreciate that, and I would hate to turn away someone like yourself when you're trying to bring something proactive to the community, so.
But one of the first things that I encountered when we moved here, there were visioning meetings, and I went to those, and out of that, we got Foothills Energy Co-op. That started from that. So I understand the volunteer issues,
Mhm.
but I know with the right start, there can be a lot of people engaged, so.
Yeah, and you look like you already have a great start, so I'd be more than happy to support that. Thank you.
He's been growing that beard for a while. It's not a great start. That's long-term dedication. Jonathan.
Kind of a follow-up to what Councillor Kelly was getting at. Dare I say it this way, I think it'd be good for us to dip our toes into the water here, but they like that, eh? Just to see where this could lead us without going wholeheartedly. The one concern I have is it's easily made into, I don't want to say politicized. And that's where some of the concerns I have with different communities. I've seen a bit of that video, a little bit of a politicized slant to it, and I think we have to be very careful with that. Picking up on what Councillor Thompson has said, I think it's very important for us to have the proper messaging out there. We've introduced our water conservation bylaw. We only have 2 levels on purpose on that.
Right.
Can we do more? Probably. Should we do more? Potentially. But definitely looking to work with you to see where that may go and potentially how we can support from that perspective without the politicizing of the issue, I think would be critical because there's so many different variables that are involved. I mean, I'm a huge fan of hearing the proponents and the opponents and having that every voice heard around the table. Thank you.
Great points. Cindy.
Yeah, just in, over the years with all of our restrictions, it was really hard getting the message out that we weren't in a water shortage. There was water in the river, we just couldn't physically pull it out. And that is why we were on conservation and all those measures for so many years. But then you put the drought into it and all these talks about, being environmentally conscious and restricting water. People got confused as to why we were restricting things the way they were, and people were continuing to, take drastic measures in their own home and not be able to live in a normal manner because they were so worried, clouding these issues of we had a mechanical problem because the floods wiped out equipment. And now confusing it with the climate and the drought. And when people see the Old Man River dried up, they think that we're close to that situation where we haven't been, right? So I don't want to fear monger. I also don't want to. We are going to have our own major project as a member of SHREC that with replacing our draft intake with a proper draft intake. So there's going to be a lot of information that we as a town have to get out and explain to people around those projects. So I don't want to get it mixed up. I think conservation and what we can do, and based on our numbers, which are all publicly available to SHREC on their website, our residents do a really good job. And Craig is doing a great job at sealing up some leaks. So yes, I think it's important people have rain barrels that they cut where they can, but also, I want people to be able to enjoy living their life in Turner Valley and not being and Black Diamond. Sorry. And so I think that we can offer. I would like us to be able to help out, show you where some of the information is, so you know how we are doing as residents in the town. I think that actually the library is a great venue. That they're willing for showing things like that. But I would like to see what administration can provide. I'm not so much into the co-partnering because I know how busy we are with amalgamation and budget and other things, and getting our equipment up to where it should be is our main priority. Because we have asked residents because of those mechanical issues over the years to make such changes in their lives. I love it. I love that you're doing this. I love the environmental consciousness of it, and that's great. But we have to provide the actual service and focus on that. And we have some great numbers, and Craig's given us some great facts on how much water loss that we've been able to fix since amalgamation, by fixing some pipes and things. So, those are some wins. So that's where.
There you go. Excellent. Thank you. Hazel.
Thank you Larry, very much for your presentation. I'm just gonna piggyback a little bit of what my fellow counselors said. I'm a member of the library board, so I could bring your, maybe your presentation to them and ask them to invite you to our next board meeting.
Okay.
Because I mean, that may be a start of where you can start holding these town hall meetings.
I think that was one of the places that I had on the list, that it would be the most cost effective for us as an organization. But if the larger venue is needed, I want to be prepared to do that at some point. If I might just comment on the politicization, hard word to say, that's why we avoid it sometimes.
I had to say it several times in my head.
One of the reasons, or one of the things that I've championed in my professional life is working with multiple stakeholders, and there are such things as wicked problems. They were first defined in 1960s, and wicked problems are those that don't have a defined question. They have a strong moral compass component to it. And there are no right answers. And I think that's what you guys face all the time. It's right in the context, but it might not be right for someone else. And that's where the magic of working with stakeholders to find common purpose, to find a way to get through the fog. And I support entirely what you're saying of not to get what can evolve into a crazy shouting match. That's not what I'm after. I'm after getting a fact-based information so that there's a platform that everybody who's participating knows what they're talking about and can share that. And there's enough to argue about after that. Let's get the foundation there, and that's really the purpose here.
Cindy, did you have last? Excellent questions, Council. I'm glad that you followed up on a politicalization component, because that was my concern as well. I love everything that you presented here. I think as a town, we can definitely fall into that co-host mantra. Very important that we don't have any council sitting up answering a question, because it'll turn into an amalgamation debate in 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Heather has some great points. We've been on conservation, we've done the bylaws, we've had mechanical issues that have contributed, but I think from the downside, we can relay a lot of that factual information. You can see where the flood of 2013 totally sewered, for lack of a better word, a lot of operations. And you can see how we built up. Then you can see when the amalgamation happened, how we started plugging holes left, right, and center to the tune of, I think, 3,400 cubes a day, probably. We have, like, that's a day times 365. Like, that's huge, right? So all of these things, we'd love to present those facts for you and your group to relay as factual information. So I think we definitely can work with you here on this. That's what I heard across the table. Is it's great concept, great idea. We just need to make sure that we aren't in the front and professionals are, which are you. So I'm totally fine with this. And I think moving forward, what was your first date that you wanted to try and nail something down?
Well, I was gonna not propose those yet. I want to see
Okay.
what everybody else
There you
has
go.
in mind,
Let's go.
because there may be some things that we would step on each other, and that isn't helpful for anyone.
Excellent. Then I think you can talk with administration in next week's and see where you guys are at. And then when the time comes, just keep us abreast and we can go from there. Heather?
Is there an opportunity, and I would ask my fellow board members or
We're board members as well.
directors of TREP,
Oh, yes.
is there an opportunity for Larry to sit in as a guest at our meetings other than any camera stuff? I think there would be.
They're all video recorded.
So I'd suggest you maybe come as a guest
To shrub.
or to one of the shrub meetings, because that is where the information's gonna come from. It's not gonna come from us, this town, because they operate our water services.
Right.
So for usage and all that kind of thing, those questions will be there. Just a thought,
Absolutely. No, that's perfect.
the shrub meetings are,
Sounds good.
there's one on Thursday. Right online.
Tomorrow. 1 o'clock. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for all you've done for the community.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
So how many years before? No, I'm kidding.
My last shave was in 1970.
Go talk to Dusty.
I try not to.
Yeah, so.
Thanks,
All right, thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. All right, we don't need a motion rising. He'll get back to administration when the time comes. He's not in a hurry, so.
I'd just like to go and see what they thought.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Bylaws and policies, we have none. Action items, we have Diamond Valley Day Parade Route Report. Say that 5 times fastest. Diamond Valley Day Parade Route Report. Route.
You're British
Route.
Speaking of which, I didn't even notice.
The king is up there. He's my bro. Oh, yeah. Me and him were tight.
Probably should.
Hey,
Unlimited.
Diamond Valley Parade.
Thank you, your worship. So yeah, the intent of this report, one is to say again, good success with the 2024 activity. And now we're looking at planning for 2025. So administration has put together 4 options. The one we're recommending is option 1, which is the status quo from this year, as it has no additional costs. And we have staff available for any questions.
Excellent, excellent. Brandon, Counselor.
Yeah, there's almost a motion there. I just wanted to say, the parade was fantastic this year and administration did a great job rerouting what was potentially a tough decision. And I know as council, we were able to see, you know, from a bird's eye view, what the route was gonna look like. But kind of getting that message across to residents was a bit challenging. I think it's gonna be not equally as challenging. I think that there's gonna be some upset residents that we don't go back to the original route. But I think this is a great opportunity to make a fundamental change here and stick with it, especially from a cost savings standpoint, volunteer standpoint, like everything that's listed here makes total sense. So I don't know if you want a motion from me. I don't have them right in front of me, but I'll let Councilor Gordon go first.
Yeah, I'll let you make the motion there, Councilor Kelly. One of the things that I saw in the report was a concern, because the size of the parade, they were joining, the tail was joining the head.
Yes.
Because I was there, I was able to, the walkers, so some of the cars I doubled up. And then I had the walkers just move right through so that it got flowing. So just something to keep in mind, maybe have a second parade person at the end there before one of us get there, just to keep that in mind, because it cleared it up pretty quick, if you recall, right?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe because we do have admin here, how many floats slash,
Entries.
yeah, how many entries did we have? Because, no, I remember at the end, it was like they were having to wait for the end.
And that's, yeah, and
So should we consider capping? Sorry, I'll let Mike.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Right, thank you. Through the chair, I appreciate the question. We had 70 entries with over 500 participants. We're fully aware of that clog at the end of it, but some of it also was that we didn't have any marshalling during the parade. There were some gaps there that we learned from, and we feel that that can be easily corrected. Additionally, we do think that we can set it up a little bit different at the beginning so that we can alleviate that. We wouldn't want to cap necessarily. That said, if all of a sudden the demand was such that it exceeded what we were able to provide in the route, either have to space it out a little bit longer and then allow for something at the end where they're moving on and past where the start of it would be. So we do have some contingency plans for that and feel that we can adequately manage that within our resources.
Excellent.
yeah, that's what, and really quick follow-up. One of the things that, just gonna throw it out there, you know where we start and we go right east out of the parking lot? Would it work to drop south to where that, alongside the field and then go up? Cause there was some residents were like, that would give us an extra viewing space. Has that been considered?
Thank you for the question. I'd like to defer to my colleague, Laura Lee Bean, to be able to respond to that. We have looked at it and she can answer that in more detail.
Yeah, it's there at the bottom.
Thank you through the chair. So we did discuss with our parade marshal, when we were planning for this parade route. They did say to us that because that road along the field is not paved, they do feel that that may be an issue for the horses and that type of thing. But it is something that I have thought about discussing again with them this year, to help at least with that initial marshaling, even if we're starting a little bit further up.
All right, we're gonna go, yeah, it's fantastic. Hazel, and then we'll take motion.
I totally agree with this route that is being proposed, the same as this year. I thought it was great. I don't know, did you receive much feedback from the businesses saying that there was a loss of revenue without the parade actually going past the downtown?
Good question.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And through the chair, we surveyed all the stakeholders. So everybody that had any involvement in this whatsoever, including, the participants, the general public, and the businesses specifically. So 68 surveys were distributed to affected businesses. 9 were returned in terms of responses. They've all reported that they felt that the business was down, so they definitely saw that. Now, remembering that this is a maximum 3-hour window. However, they were also offered an opportunity prior, when we knew that we were changing the route, to do something special. So whether they held some sort of sidewalk sale or some sort of a special event, and that the town would amplify that, we would promote it and we would work with them and market it. And when we surveyed back, they reported that none of them had done such. So it is difficult because we understand that it does affect them, but this is only one opportunity out of many throughout the year, where they would be able to potentially help promote their own business and attract more shoppers. The other surveys that came in were very positive to this particular route. Certainly the spectators enjoy it. I will confirm, but I don't believe we had any complaints from anybody new on the route, any of the residences, which we were concerned about initially, and
Nice.
that went over very well as well.
Again, I'm glad you mentioned it. It's a 3-hour window, right? And so community spirit for 3 hours. It seems like a full win. So that's fantastic.
Excuse me, just to add that, I might remind council, when we initially had proposed this, we are diverting 3,500 vehicles around the town
That's right.
that would not necessarily stop for any particular reason. And many of those are large vehicles, and some of which are carrying hazardous materials. So we do need to keep all of that in mind, and the additional cost and the resources just to be able to put this on safely as it is. So we do appreciate that you consider that as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We'll take that motion.
The council approved Route A due to the minimal financial and operational impact. And if I may add, the huge success that the last parade was.
All in favor? And as carried unanimously, thank you. 9.2 Griffiths Memorial Center Utility Billing. Mr. Davey.
Thank you, your worship. So we're looking for council direction on the utility bills for 2025 and onwards. So just part of our service review, we're looking at cleaning up all of the town of Diamond Valley's new agreements, and we uncovered that the town had been and continues to in 2024 pay for the Griffiths Memorial Center's utility bills. So administration recommends that 2025 the town no longer pays those bills. So it's fair with all other groups.
Okay, thank you. Cindy?
Yeah, I think that's only fair, that they're not treated differently than other community groups. So I would be happy to give option 1, that council direct administration to charge Griffiths Memorial Center for their town utility costs effective January 1st, 2025.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
But we gave them the year, right?
Yeah, we'll give it.
Yeah, okay. Heather.
I totally agree with moving forward with this to make it fair for all the nonprofits that have operations in our town and the taxpayers. I mean, the Griffiths Town, the Valley Neighbors pretty much cater to seniors and some programs for adults and kids, but we have to think of the whole community and what taxes are being paid. This seems like a minimal amount, but still, be fair, I think we have to move forward with this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Straightforward in my opinion. Seeing none, all in favor? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.3 arena floor scrubber.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Go ahead, sir.
So we're looking for council approval to redirect funds from sold assets to replace the second floor scrubber. And we have Mr. Beaton here to answer any questions.
Councilor Gordon.
I love these quick reports and the reasoning behind it, so thank you, Mr. Beaton. I will make the motion that council directs administration to purchase or lease a new floor scrubber using the revenue from the sale of Old Town equipment, not to exceed $20,000.
Excellent, thank you. Go ahead.
I have a question regarding lease versus purchasing.
Mhm.
Is there kind of the same kind of deal that you have with the skid steer on that? Like, no, okay.
No,
So
no, unfortunately, none that I'm aware of.
is it better than, in your opinion, just to purchase it?
Through the chair, I'm not familiar with the benefits of a floor scrubber lease versus a purchase. Other than in theory, floor scrubbers wear out reasonably quickly. They get hard use, regular use, and they're not cheap. So a lease may allow you to replace that machine on a cycle versus waiting until it explodes and then replace it. So I would have to look at the benefits of both.
Yeah, and I trust it. Thank you.
Brendan and Hazel.
One of them was replaced last year and then this one finally crapped out. How long have we had those two for, if you don't mind me asking?
Through the chair, I don't really know how long they were with the arena before I came along. I'm not
So they're
sure how old they were, but judging by the look of the one that just failed, it was probably about 10, 12 years old.
Okay, okay, yeah, a couple grand a year, that's not bad. They cover huge ground, so I
Oh,
can
yeah.
appreciate the use of them for sure. Thanks, Greg.
Cindy, did you want, or you're good?
Yeah, it was just more a comment to make sure, it would be useful if we had like years and reports. And I was just wondering, is this because it's an emergency or why it's not on capital budget? Because you need to have it this fall? Is that?
Correct. So through the chair, there's two floor machines at that facility, one that sort of stays dedicated to one building and one at the other building, as I understand it. And we replaced one last year because it was costing us a fair amount to repair it on a regular basis. This one failed and we were hoping to have it repaired, but we found that there's no repairs we could make. The body of the machine just failed and it was more expensive to fix it than to replace it. So that's why we're asking now, because we've just entered into our season and we're shorthanded on equipment.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on the floor? We do. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 9.4, I have a proclamation Disability Employment Awareness Month. Can I get a motion for that, please? Hazel gives us that. All in favor? Thank you. Proclamation Disability Employment Awareness Month. Whereas persons with disabilities are valued members of Alberta and deserve the opportunity to live and work in their community where they're respected and rewarded for their efforts and skills and accomplishments. And whereas persons with disabilities are contributing members of the workforce in Alberta and are a critical part of our effort to build a strong economy. And whereas there is a rich network of nonprofit agencies, practitioners, policymakers, consumer organizations, consumers, and their families committed to promoting and strengthening employment opportunities for persons with disabilities in the province of Alberta. And whereas Alberta employers, both in public and private sector, can benefit further from the positive outcomes empowering disabled persons to have equal opportunity to social inclusion and sustained meaningful employment. And whereas October is Disability Employment Awareness Month, that has origins in the US starting as far back as 1945. It was introduced in Canada in 2000 with Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario proclaiming and celebrating over a decade ago. And whereas proclaiming October as Disability Employment Awareness Month will help raise awareness about disability employment issues and will serve to celebrate the contributions of persons with disabilities. Therefore, let it be known that we, members of the Diamond Valley Town Council, do hereby proclaim October 21st as Disability Employment Awareness Month, which is DEAM, in the town of Diamond Valley, Alberta, September 18th, 2024. Signed, Mayor Barry Crane. Thank you. And I believe we have another one on top field of that. Oh no. Send that one.
Deputy American read it if he wants, but I don't mind reading it.
I was gonna send her to Jonathan. Hazel, would you like to do the next one?
Oh, me?
Yes. Deputy Mayor. All right, I'll give the motion for proclamation for Alberta Development Officers Week. All in favor?
Sir.
Whereas the development officer, like my Jesus, Mayor Crane.
I didn't give it my normal match. I've been reined in.
I don't know, we locked it. It's like, here we go.
Current planning and development specialist with knowledge of current legislation, policy and bylaw systems and technical requirements for physical development within communities in the province of Alberta. A development officer enforces and administers land use regulations and policies on behalf of the municipality and is designated to the position of development authority by the municipality as defined by the Municipal Government Act. 2000 chapter M-26. Whereas the Alberta Development Officers Association representing professional development officers in Alberta endorses Alberta Development Officers Week to recognize sound development and planning practices and the contribution made by the development officers to the quality of development within our communities and environment. And whereas Alberta Development Officers Week helps us to publicize, recognize the work of our municipal colleagues in planning and development for improvements of the town of Diamond Valley. And whereas we recognize development officers and their commitment to public service. And now, therefore, I, Deputy Mayor Hazel Martin, do hereby proclaim the week of September 22nd to September 28th, 24 to be designated as Alberta Development Officers Week in the town of Diamond Valley. Proclaim this 18th day of September 2024.
Good job.
Thank you.
I know it's a mouthful.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Excellent, thank you. And those two are off the list. 10.1, the Diamond Valley Critical Infrastructure Report. Now, this is a 200-page report, I understand. Craig, we allocated 3 hours for this, so I hope you're ready. And so you just take the hot seat. No, we're just gonna go quick. Okay, Council, you have a report. Adam, did you want to start off with a little lead in?
Yeah, thanks, your worship. So obviously, like you mentioned there, this is a very important report, and many thanks to Craig for putting this together. So it gives council and the community a good snapshot of all the infrastructure that we own and maintain. And where we want to go with this is we know we have the MDP, the Master Development Plan that's started now. And that's going to give us the overall vision and direction for the town for the next 10 to 20 years. So what we're proposing to follow that plan is an infrastructure master plan to look at all of our assets listed here, figure out and rate where our critical needs are. As you can see, Craig's attached several different maps of both previous towns that give a lot of good data with lots of different colors. You can see too where a lot of the reds are. And show all the critical infrastructure. So what we're really looking to do is target this infrastructure master plan that again will be synchronized with the master development plan to give us a roadmap for the next 5 to 10 years for where taxpayer dollars should go towards reinvestment to make sure our underground infrastructure is safe. Maybe with that, just turn it over to council for any questions with Mr. B.
Excellent, thank you. Councilor Kelly.
Just because I forget, next year the plan is to do a road on the west side. Can you remind me which road that is?
Right now.
Frontenac. Frontenac, okay. And that one's going ahead. That's obviously, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it go ahead. We did a major one on the east side of town this year. I'd love to pay it forward on this side of town. I think that's a great give and take. So I'd like to see Frontenac get done for sure. So, okay, thank you for reminding me. Thanks, Hazel.
Yeah, we'll definitely see that list. Councilor Brian.
Yeah, I love these kind of reports, and I also like the forward thinking of getting a master plan like this. One of the things we heard at our water town hall, the utility rate town hall, was how many residents understand the need for infrastructure replacement. They understand our deficit, but the fear, and justified, is that they'll bear the brunt and that burden initially. So I'm wondering, and this is a question to admin, as we look ahead to this master plan, is there a strategic way that we're going to be expecting to see that looks at maybe over the next 20 years, how we can use some of the debentures to help offset the burden immediately? And very similar to how the province of Alberta talked about last night, how they're moving forward with their investment in their education, with them now holding onto that property as assets, using debentures to move forward, so it's actually allocated over time. Is that something we can expect to see in this?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, your worship. Yeah, I think I understand it correctly. So, when we look at our next year's capital plan, that's, council votes on that, and that gives you the next year. Then we build the 5-year and 10-year unfunded plan from there. The idea behind this is this would drive it forward. So we would be able to rationalize which projects make the most sense for the next 10 years. So we know we have a gap that's bigger than what our current tax base can provide for. So to Councilor Gordon's point with debentures, if we can map that out over the next 10 years, we might be able to have a good idea of what things will cost and when, and we can look at spreading that cost. Of course, the piece on this too is, you'll know a lot of the maps have a lot of red. So even though we're working on this plan, and in 2026, we would like to introduce a general infrastructure reinvestment fund for council's consideration, so we can start putting aside a little money every year. At any given time, some of those red lines are critical, so they could break too. So the intent behind the plan is it'll allow us to target the highest need right away, but we also have to be cognizant that breaks are still possible as well. I don't know if that completely answered the question through the chair.
Yeah, it does, because, I'm not a huge fan of using debentures just to replace. I usually want to use debentures in adding assets. But at the same time, I don't want our current taxpayers to be hearing about tax increases like crazy. Neither do I want the deficit like the city of Calgary potentially might be facing with the critical infrastructure failures. So having it mapped out strategically is something I think we can support as council in our conversations with the community. And if it even goes beyond 10 years, I'd like to see that, because not all the product has to be done within the next 10 years. So we can map it accordingly and be very strategic in our thinking. The reason I'm thinking that is then 40 years from now, that debenture is paid. So our younger people that are moving in, they can look ahead and say, well, we've got infrastructure driven. And really the basis of my philosophy on that is economic development and economic growth is driven by critical infrastructure and how well it actually is maintained. So I think as we move forward as a community, investing in that is something I'd like to see us really do strategically.
Your comments. Brendan, then Hazel's got a comment, I think. Nope, had to go. Brendan, then Hannah.
Okay, just because we're for the sake of budget, I'm just gonna throw this out there. And I'm not being budget friendly, but I'm kind of going on the back of what Councilor Gordon's talking about. Just because I don't see it listed here, but when the final council on Black Diamond, when we were dealing with the Dairy Queen build, and they were gonna pave, I can't recall the street, the one that you're on, Craig, Fourth, they paved that one. And then we did a couple of the other, or just the one road that Dairy Queen was on, right?
Yeah, so Dairy Queen's on Fourth, and then the infrastructure is replaced on First.
Yeah, so piggybacking on what Councillor Gordon's saying, just because I don't see it highlighted here. If Frontenac's being done, and as we're going to budget, talks, as I just mentioned, are there any other smaller roadways that you could have a discussion about doing at the same time? Although it's gonna be more expensive, the equipment's already there. And this is what we talked about as a council and back in the day when Dairy Queen was done. Might be able to save a couple $100,000, maybe a bit less than that. But if we could see some of those options, you know, this is what Frontenac's gonna cost. And then if we did this little chunk, because the equipment's already in there, if you had a conversation with the contractor or even before it goes out to tender, I would be open to see that, because I hate seeing a new road and then you get off it and you're on a dirt road. And I know that those little gaps exist between the two communities, and I think that if there's an opportunity there to spend a couple $100,000 more, but also bring up that critical infrastructure that Jonathan's talking about, I would be remiss if we didn't take those opportunities, especially if we're gonna explore a venture to do that.
Sure, go ahead, Craig.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. Just so I understand, your comment, are you indicating, just the surface, like the pavements, connection pieces, or are you talking full infrastructure on the smaller connections, or?
Because I can't see it, like, so I'm just primarily looking at this one here.
Yep.
I would leave that to the expert. If the infrastructure needs to be replaced, like if the pipes and sewer need to be done.
Yeah.
Let's do it, or at least let's have that conversation. If it's already looking really good, I'm very unfamiliar with this side of town. And I certainly don't want to pave it and then in 15 years have to tear it up again to replace the infrastructure underneath. I'd rather do it in one shot. Generally these areas are a couple hundred, maybe 100 feet, because it could, you know, you're potentially connecting one main road vein or artery to another one. And we're just trying to, I would just like to see some of that stuff cleaned up. I think that our residents deserve it. And again, Jonathan's point, you know, having that critical infrastructure there, it's so good for the town. And I know that it costs a lot of money, but we already have the equipment in there. Like, let's just look at getting it done. And maybe over the course of 10 years, we can get ourselves 5 years ahead, even if we have to take a debenture out on it. And that's just my thoughts. So I'd leave that up to you. You're the expert and you can talk to them. But if it needs to be done, great. If there's a road that's failing, but the infrastructure underneath is only 10 years old, let's just repave it. That's an easy win too.
Absolutely, and no, that's perfect, it makes sense, and we certainly do our best to do those things. For example, last year, you may have noticed that we paved the first block in front of the Fire Hall Station 3.
Yes.
Because there was no infrastructure on the road that we needed to address, so I did have to fix the storm that was crossing the street, and it had collapsed. So we fixed that storm and then just paved that stretch of road. But it was a quick win, quick hit, because I knew there was no infrastructure and we had enough in the capital to do that. And absolutely, we do try to tie in any adjacent infrastructure when we tie in those projects or complete those projects. Yeah. Problem is, it gets, where do you stop? Sometimes it's almost seemingly endless. And First Ave is a great example of that. The middle three blocks were like the more critical, with the tertiary blocks being on the list, but not for another couple of years. And I just thought, you know what? We're here. Let's do the whole 5 blocks, because it needs to be done anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because it was all integrated into one strip, I thought it was easier to disrupt everyone now and not come back in a few years and disrupt. You know,
Yes,
so
right to say.
we always do our best to consider the options that we have, but absolutely, I agree with that.
Please give me some of those ideas.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I'm gonna go Heather, then Cindy.
Yeah, I just note on the MPE map, all they're looking at on this map is the sewer infrastructure, and this is a fairly old map and some of these have already been done, so just for Counselor
It happens.
Valley, Sunset's done and Windsor's done on this map. So, I think that the Black Diamond side, they're not as old, they're 3 years old, so some of it's been done. I fully, agree that we should be moving forward with the, infrastructure management plan to coincide with the MDP. That'll get us in good shape. I am pretty happy that we've gone forward with, I don't want to end up like Calgary, and we need to take care of our infrastructure. It's countrywide, this aging infrastructure. In some ways, it's pretty nice that it happened to Calgary, because now it makes it easier for us to explain to residents how important it is to keep up to date on our aging infrastructure, because boy, we could drain our reservoir in a big hurry if something happened, I'll tell you, it'll be gone. Calgary's very fortunate that they've got the water that they've got running into the city. So we could be in a lot of trouble if something like that happened to us. Anyway, that's my comments. I fully agree that we should be moving forward with that report.
Excellent, thank you. Cindy?
Just wondering, Center Ave on the Black Diamond side, is it, cause that's the one I've heard of much more than Frontenac. And I appreciate, the back and forth, but we are one community, even though I said Turner Valley tonight. But like, I know Frontenac's one on the list, but is it truly more critical than Center Ave?
Through the chair, yes. From the reports that I'm reading, supplied to me, it does appear that Center Ave is definitely got 2 blocks that are critical. The current state, how critical, I'm not 100%. But I do need to point out that Frontenac has been deferred for 5 years, 4.5 years. And we have a near collapsing sewer line on that street as well. So I think this is the challenge for every municipality. Calgary is stranger to this. You have a handful of priorities. You kind of roll a dice and pick one and or two, and maybe you pick the wrong one. It's tough to say. I can tell you right now, Center Ave would be a massive disruptions to absolutely everything. So,
You don't want to do that in election year, really.
so not that I would be opposed to doing the disruptive portion of it, it's just, it's a large project for more than just replacement of infrastructure. It's a massive traffic accommodation that would have to be considered, and it would definitely impact everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So, for myself, for the town, the infrastructure master plan, I have lots of great information. Unfortunately, as Heather pointed out, it is aged. Even the newest information from Urban is still slightly out of date. But here's the challenge that I face. Both reports aren't equal. It's not comparing product to product. Some of it's dated, some of it's been changed, and the progression of deterioration, I don't know what it looks like. Was the deterioration of a priority area for former Turner Valley such that now it's near collapse, or is it sort of in the same state as it was in 2018 or 14? Whereas the IMP would allow us to integrate both structures and infrastructure plans, give us an equal read on everything, and then give me an opportunity to sort of put it all together and identify proper priorities based on an entire image versus 2 different pieces that don't suit or match each other.
Excellent. I got a follow-up from Cindy and then Brandon. Yeah.
because of the massiveness of ever having to do center, wouldn't it be appropriate to start maybe doing some investigative pieces, engineering work to make sure that we're not going to be faced with a huge problem and then having to respond reactively to it. Just as well timing with Alberta Transport that they chip in for paving like they did on Sunset, those sorts of things that if we plan a few years out, we know it'll go so much better. But just we don't know how bad it is, but we know it's red, like, and that is such a major part of our town. I think that paying for some engineering work, maybe if we could have that in the budget would be good. I just have one more comment on this report, great report. I know that we're doing it after the MDP, but I just want to make a comment. It sometimes feels when we do these strategic planning and coming up with these great planning ideas and philosophies that it's not attached to the dollars and figures and realities of infrastructure. And we might say, oh, it would be great to have this commercial over here or this residential over here, but then we find out it'll never be feasible because of X, Y, and Z or infrastructure. So to me, I know we have to do it the way we're doing it, but it's frustrating because it would just be nice to know that some things are pie in the sky and aren't feasible on the infrastructure side. So, yeah, hopefully you're involved in the MDP with the information you do know.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think the infrastructure master plan would certainly be part of the part of scope that I would want to incorporate would be to understand the capacities of all of our infrastructure, at all its, let's call it, new potential development areas. So we understand better our capacities for, developing further and expanding in those areas. I know that there's some question around south of the hospital and capacity for flows, and that can certainly change how we look forward to developing. Obviously, you don't want to add another 3,000 homes to the south if you only have capacity for maybe 300.
All right, thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, just a bit of background here in terms of Alberta Transport, and Councillor Holiday touched on too, but more so for the CAO, and Craig's probably been enlightened by this a little bit too. I think there needs to be a greater conversation when it comes to Center Ave with Alberta Transport. They've got their big 10, 15, 20-year plan, and there's been talks of twinning that road as it comes through town. As we see businesses like Dairy Queen, we're going to need more prominent turning signals. We may even need more lights on that road, that crosswalk in between AG Foods and like the highway. It is like, it's unsafe. We hear about things all the time about, kids near accidents and stuff because kids are zipping through even when the lights are on. We just added another crosswalk over by the bridge. So I think there needs to be a larger conversation with Alberta Transport to figure out what's the long-term plan here. Because as much as I'd like to see that redone, I don't want them coming knocking on our door in 5 years and saying, hey, we'd like to really blow this up and make it, even if it's 3 lanes wide. One way going from west to east and then 2 lanes going east to west. We've been banging at their door about a bridge upgrade since the flood. And had absolutely no response about that. That should be another piece of that conversation because that bridge should be looked at. It needs to be wider. It should be longer. But again, that would be up to Alberta Transportation. I think if we're able to do Frontenac next year, that gives us 1.5 years to explore some of those conversations with Alberta Transport and figure out, look, we're looking at doing Center Ave in 2026. What's the game plan here? Because it's there, it's just as much on them as it is on us. That's a provincial highway, it goes right through our town. So I think that let's have that conversation. And if we need to write some notes to the minister and say, hey, you got to get together with Alberta Transportation. We need some provincial funding here. We can't do this on our own. This is a massive project. We asked for a bridge in 13. You didn't give it to us. We're upgrading the road next year. What can we do?
Heather Dunhazel.
Yeah, I think that it's important to have those conversations with Alberta Transportation, but I can tell you right now.
I know.
Those conversations has been held for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And if Alberta Transportation does anything, they're going to bypass the town. They're not going through.
Well, then just tell us that.
Yeah, exactly. But
Without
that's
business.
what the conversation was 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's fair.
So just letting you know,
Yeah.
but I absolutely agree that, you know, we can't just drop it just because they drop it. You know, like, we have to maintain that road. Yeah, they had Volker 7, but maintaining the road, but
Yeah.
we fill potholes and stuff on that, don't we? Anyway, if we need to do our infrastructure underneath it, it's their heavy trucks and everything that are going down, back and forth and down it. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of,
Well, guess
I
what?
totally,
We're gonna be rerouting all the trucks on
Yeah.
a brand new road that we just paved this summer.
yeah,
All their big heavy equipment's gonna be driving right down our side streets because they're gonna be replacing Center Street,
yeah, exactly.
right?
So, yeah, so those conversations need to be had.
Throw
I
an extra
totally
inch
agree
on
with
that
that.
repaving, would you?
Yeah.
Just an inch though.
But this will help, this plan will help future.
Yeah, great, yeah, the report, yeah, everything's great.
Yes. Good points all around, everyone. And I think Hazel is going to finish us off.
Right, just a comment. You talked, you touched on in your report about recreation, so that would include all the pathways too would be looked at as well? And the recreational facilities?
Through the chair, Councillor Martin, absolutely, that would be the ideal infrastructure master plan to include facilities, recreational pathways, playgrounds, sports fields. Because it's all infrastructure, it's all part of the master plan for, you know, what keeps our community vibrant and healthy, so. Yeah.
You wouldn't overlap a recreation plan, is that correct?
No, we'd just be looking at the replacement value, the age, condition.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe even the viability or the usage that happens in the sites.
Adam, would you weigh in on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just to piggyback on what Craig was mentioning there too. So the infrastructure master plan is a big portion of the asset management, right? The asset management is just also active management, so all those repairs as well. Once the MDP is done, the IMP is carefully following that. The other plans, like the rec master plan, will look at future stuff. So this is very much about what we have now and where we'll follow the MDP. Once that MDP is done, that will be, you know, potentially a 2026 item for that rec master plan. And there's a bunch of other ones too, right? Land use bylaw, that kind of thing as well. So it should all segue along. We can stick handle it as such.
Thank you very much for that.
I think it lines up to a very busy 2025, 26.
27, 28.
Next year, laying the MVP and all the documents that are gonna flow through it. That's gonna be the real set of work here, so hopefully we can stick handle that, say, very effectively. Great report all around, great reports from all the staff. Well done. And I believe we are concluded. No motion needed on this one. So thank you very much, and we are adjourned.